Hello, today's demo is going to be showing you how to use Golden's high flow liquid acrylic as the medium for marbling. Right now in my container I have Elmer's powdered paste that was mixed with water. It creates a nice medium to work inside. It's a little viscous. What you see in the tray right now is residue from a previous marbling. What happens sometimes if you put too much extra paint in, it drops to the bottom. So it's actually fine for marbling. There's going to be some residue at the bottom, but the key is to try not to put too much in there so you have too much wasted paint. The marbling surface is the very, very top layer, and that's the only part that the paper will touch. So that's what you want to create your pattern on. And I have a various set of colors. I have some metallics that are also usable. And I like to use a little pipette as my applicator. I feel like straight from the bottle it's too easy to accidentally squeeze up too much. So I'll take my pipette and I will suck up just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot. This will give me way more than enough to start my pattern. Make sure that you screw the top on. And what I'm going to do is create my own pattern. So I want to drop my pigment so that it just hovers on top of the surface. And it might look like there really isn't a lot on there, but what's happening is it's spreading throughout the surface and creating a light skim of color. So it's pretty surprising how little you actually need. Again, not to put too much because otherwise the excess paint will sink to the bottom. So very little drips on the immediate surface of your marbling medium. If you like a little spontaneity, you can kind of not be so precise. And you can take a new pipette if it's a completely different color, or just make sure you clean it out. We don't want to cross-contaminate. I'm using some pearl right now. Sometimes I like to put like a dot inside of a dot and create a pattern that way. Sometimes I'll be a little bit more random. On this one I'll show you a much more precise patterning. And what you'll notice is that the next color will push out the previous. So if you put a color inside of a color, my pearl is pushing out the red. So if you want a certain pattern of color, you have to think about the order that you drop the color in. And some colors spread more than others. If you notice, the black is not moving very much. It must be just a little bit heavier pigment. A lot of it is actually sinking to the bottom. But my red spread really well. My pearl spread really well. Blue tends to sink, I'm noticing. And that's just the nature of what you have. I mean, there's nothing you can do differently. So a lot of my black sunk just because it seems to be heavier. So maybe I will do red again. Now, you could print your piece just like this, meaning that you could put the paper right on it. Or you can do what a lot of people like to do with marbling, is actually manipulate the surface of the ink or the paint to create a marbled pattern. So you can use things like combs like this or this. You could use your pipette, you could use a popsicle stick, whatever you wish. And what I'm going to do is kind of comb through it, and I'm going to kind of pull those colors around. And when you have something that's a little longer, you can get kind of a more definite comb pattern. I like to use a comb that's actually made out of pins or nails. It's very fine. This is a little thick, so it's getting lost. The pattern's getting a little lost. Now you don't want to overmix because then it tends to not look very good. So be quick about it. Do your swirl pattern. Try not to scrape it on the bottom so you pick up colors that you don't want. And when you're happy with it, you're going to print. So when you take your paper, you're going to kind of make a bend in it, and you're going to make sure that the whole entire paper will fit inside your tray. So it's not going to fit very well this way, but it will this way. And this piece of paper I'll use as the front and back of my next book. So I'll just be cutting it in half. So I want to make sure that the entire thing goes on a nice spot of my marbling. So belly in first. Those corners down. And whatever the paper surface is touching is what's going to pick up the marbling. So you carefully take the corner, and you're going to kind of lightly squeegee it across the edge as you pull it up. And you have your marble patterning. Now sometimes you can print a second one, that's why I always like to have some extra paper around. This is also cleaning out the surface for the next person, so might as well get something out of it. Now that wasn't a whole lot, but maybe I can get a little bit more in this corner. I didn't get a whole lot in there, but maybe I can use that for the interior of my book. So I'm going to put this on the drying rack. And then I have to come back and clean the surface of the marbling container. And it's fairly simple, and it's very similar to how you actually transferred your marble onto the paper. I just use newsprint. It's cheap, works well, and I can use one piece of paper more than once. So you're just going to kind of comb through the surface and pick up any extra remaining ink that might be there. So there's a good chunk of ink or paint that was still on the surface. And so I'm not putting it down on the bottom, I'm not squeegeeing it all the way down to the bottom. I'm draining it just on the very top surface. Okay. Fold it over. Once it starts coming away clean, then you are ready to let the next person start marbling.